Hey guys, and welcome to our show today. We're going to be looking at upgrading this Mecanum chair chassis. So it should be a lot of fun. We're going to put some new Mecanum wheels on it, see if we make it any better. So of course that'll mean some tests before and after. We've got some really sweet giveaways for you guys today. We're going to give away 2 sets of course, new Mecanum wheels. So we'll get into that in just a little bit here. Some little bit of housekeeping. We have just today released our scholarship info, so if you are looking for that, jump on the website and there's some info there. We're also next week going to do a Teacher Appreciation Week sale, not sale I guess, but do some giveaways for that, kind of give back to some teachers and coaches in the community. So of course more info on that on the website and up on the screen right now. With that, I suppose we can jump right over to our giveaways, kind of get those rolling. Like I mentioned, we're going to do Mecanum wheels. So if you win, you'll get a set. We are changing our giveaway system just a little bit. Now, instead of the previous system where we would just ship you stuff, we'll actually just send you a coupon code, and whenever you order next, you can throw that coupon code in your cart along with the item you won, and you will get that item for free. As always, if you want to win a giveaway, you've got to make sure you're following and type the keyword into the chat. So today, the keyword, what did I type? Something. Roll. So just type roll into the chat. You'll be entered to win. Should be, like I mentioned, a lot of fun and like a really pretty good giveaway, I think, for this stream. Alright, so this is the Mecanum chair, the chassis for the Mecanum chair. It's, of course, doesn't have the chair, which we'll get into a little bit, but this is the part that will actually make it roll. It has 8 Mecanum wheels. These are the old style, and it's worked really well. It was a great test of these Mecanum wheels and definitely helped us pinpoint some of the things that made us want to go with a steel plate design on the version 2. This was built by our interns back in the summer of 2019. It was one of their last projects. Let's see here. It's powered by 12 Yellow Jackets, so there's 3 motors. Set it up. 3 motors per wheel, and each wheel drives a 12 Rex shaft. The overall ratio is 11.1 to 1, just about. So it's a 3/7 on a 3-to-1 reduction externally, which ends up being really pretty nice and snappy with this amount of wheel size and with the amount of weight you're going to run on it. That ratio is primarily chosen because of some testing we ran with the couch project, which was one of the other big intern projects for that season. We built a couch frame that we took it to the Maryland Tech Invitational and let people ride around. This was just about twice as fast as the testing and ended up pointing us toward for the ratio for that chassis. So, like I mentioned, we're going to be taking these side plates off, putting new wheels on, and seeing if we improve it. I really think we will. I think acceleration is going to be a lot nicer, and I think they're going to be smoother, but I'm really excited to see. So we're going to run it before and after. As far as control system and powering, we're running a Go Build a Radio system with a Mecanum mixer to get the right directions and all that kind of good stuff. And we're running a 4S LiPo, so that's going to be a little overvolting these motors compared to what they're spec'd to run. Each motor doesn't really pull very much power in this sense, so running them on a higher voltage is okay. Higher voltage generally will also make a motor pull more current, so you could go with a, say, 12 volt motor that might pull 10 amps at 12 volts. It will probably pull closer to 20 amps if you run it on, say, 24 volts. So we will increase the stall current on these motors, and of course they will run faster, so have more torque and more speed on the higher voltage. But for something like this, that should be just fine. Let's see. Keep walking away from my chat and I can't see a whole lot. Let's see here. Mecanum chair, wow, that seems epic. I haven't seen it yet. Very funny. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I really love this project. It's my favorite Take-Two events, especially give people rides around in. It really is a lot of fun. I suppose we can show it running on the table. we'll flip it over so it doesn't drive off the table. It's not particularly light, unfortunately. Most of the projects we make with channel, after we build them, we'll pick them up and say, wow, I can't believe how light this is. Like our tables are always way lighter than they seem like they should be. This is not one of those projects. It's always surprises me how heavy it is because it's, I think, so dense. And you're like, oh yeah, I can do this by myself, no problem. Or something like the couch or a table, you probably want to grab somebody. So it's not quiet, but I think it has a really good noise. Yeah, so it seems like it's running just fine. What I was primarily testing there, make sure all my motors were responding and running at very similar speeds, and make sure the Mecanum were all plugged into the correct ports, running in the right direction. So, for example, this I know is supposed to be forward, it's all running correctly. Same for the rotation axes, and then same for the strafing in either direction. So, we know that's pretty good, and we're pretty close to being able to push this table out of the way and do some running on the ground with these. Is the Mecanum chair live axle? Yes. So it's running, I'll kind of see if I can show you here. So these sets of motors, there's 3 motors, 2 on the bottom, 2 across from each other on a channel, and another one mounted on the third side of a U-channel. Each of them have a pinion gear. I cannot remember the size off the top of my head. It's engaging with a 30-tooth pinion gear, engaging with a 90-tooth spur gear on a 12-rex shaft. That spur gear has a hyper, so it's running that 12-rex shaft all the way out to the wheels. Each of the wheels has a 12-rex hyper in it. So it's definitely a live axle setup, very true and true. And runs gears, which is kind of a non-traditional method of powering for FTC teams, but it works really well at this scale. I think this actually is, this project, I don't know if it wasn't before 8mm Rex, but it was definitely before we really started using a lot of 8mm Rex. So a lot of builds in this era were either 12 Rex or 6D. I'm really excited to kind of tear into this and see how well some of these parts have survived. Take a look at these brass gears and see if they have any wear or anything like that. Okay, so I suppose we'll just pick this up and put it on the ground. Okay, I do like that it stands up. That is one of the nice things about this chassis. We'll kind of push our table forward here, get it out of the way. And this is our chair for this project. It's kind of a nice big armchair, which I think really adds to the character of the Mecanum chair. It definitely seems really cool because it's this big armchair that you're driving around. This floor is also, I'd say, the most slick floor that we've ridden on. Most of the time, short of something like a gym floor, we really stay on fairly grippy surfaces. It loves carpet and stuff like that. Of course, with it being Mecanums. Okay. We have some great voltage, it looks like 16.6 volts, so very nearly full charge, which would be 16.8 volts on a 4S LiPo. And our transmitter's on. It seems like it's all running great, so we'll go ahead and just drop this chair on top. All right. And we're pretty much good to drive it around. Yeah. Like I mentioned, it's pretty slick, especially with these rollers. These are about a 90A roller, so fairly slick, but it gets a lot better with some weights. okay. It's definitely bumpy. I bet you can hear it in my voice. So there's some vibration. I think a lot of that is down to the plates that have kind of collapsed a little bit on these rollers. I'm sure you'll see in a few minutes when we go and take these apart. You'll be able to see where the plates have collapsed and the rollers have started touching. I bet that's why it's not, the wheels aren't very circular anymore, but they do still function just fine. Especially while strafing, really is no big deal. You may hear a crack every once in a while, but that should be fine. And it's pretty fast. I think it's a fun amount of speed, really. So I suppose with that, we'll probably jump up to the upgrade part of this video. One thing we should improve on it sometime soon is a good way to turn it off without taking the chair off. That'd be a great safety feature to have one of these days, but so far it has been fine. Did you just say gears are uncommon for FTC? My first year we used gears on our drivetrain. Yeah, I guess it depends on what era you're from. Nowadays it seems like people don't really use gears a whole lot anymore, but definitely in the time I think Eric and I are in FTC, they were more common. On drivetrains, at least. Nowadays, it seems like everybody's running, I guess, bevel gears, which are kind of gear, or they're running belts or chain. All right, push this chair out of the way. We'll bring our table back kind of in a frame here. So this should be a pretty easy upgrade. Yeah, this chassis is pretty complex, but as long as you get it apart in the right order, it's fine. Working with box channel can be tough to make, because you have to make sure you put it together in the right order or it doesn't work. Like if I wanted to get at these screws and add a screw to this quad block holding this front leg rest on, there's no way. You couldn't get a screw inside this tube. So as long as you put it together in the right order and use stuff like standoffs and spacers, so you can use long screws to reach all the way through, it's definitely workable, but you have to think about it and think it through a little more than other projects. So for this, what we're going to do is, I'm going to flip this over. There we go. We're going to take each of these these outside channels off. We'll just unbolt them and slide them out. We'll be able to slide these wheels off their shafts and put new wheels in, making sure, of course, to get our orientation correct, because that would stink. How much does it weigh without chair? I don't know. It's probably, maybe 50 pounds? I have no idea. I'm really terrible at that stuff. Something around there. So right now, these crossbars are fixed with quad blocks. These are actually old quad blocks. So I'm just going to remove the screws that go onto the face, that thread into the face of the quad block. So we'll get those 4 screws out. With it being so close to the edge, it's definitely possible to get those screws back in, I imagine. I don't think we're going to have any issues with that. But we would definitely want to keep them aside. Something about working with quad blocks and dual blocks and a lot of the block mounts in GoBuilda is that you want to make sure that the screws that are going to the face of the part, I call that the face, that are going through a piece of channel into the block mount. You want to make sure those are fairly short. I think 8mm is the standard dimension we use here. Otherwise, you get a collide into the thread of the next screw that's coming in from the side, and that doesn't play well at all. What's the final ratio? It is 11.1 to 1. It's a 3.7 motor with a 3 to 1 external reduction. I think that's 11.1 to 1. It's been a minute since I've really talked about this chassis. Wait, the table is made of channel. Yes. I don't know. I'll just keep rolling back. There you go. So it's all framed in channel and has a wood top. It makes them crazy light. And if you just unscrew the screws that hold the table legs to the top, you can just carry it places. So our table that we take to events is also channel. Probably make a new one for next season that's 28 inches wide, so it's easier to get in two doors. But I guess something like that in millimeters. But they're crazy easy to move around, and I think because they're just aluminum extrusion and pretty reasonable size, but they are nice. I know my desk is channel as well, and I have just like some random stuff bolted to it to hold my bag, and our streaming cart is channel, so it's got some go tube for hanging headphones and all that stuff. It is really nice and fun. A lot of things here are made of channel. It's pretty much one of those things where if we can make it out of parts, it probably is made of parts. So our coat racks are all channel, stuff like that. We definitely eat our own dog food here. Whole hog, 100%. Let's see. Okay. It looks like these are going to slide off okay. To make this easier, I'm going to loosen the pinch bolts that are holding the clamping mount, that are holding the bearing in the clamping mount. So it's possible this 32 mil OD bearing, yep, is going to come off, and that should make it easier to get this crossbar out. All right. Oh, we lost a shim. Please don't go down the access hole to the downstairs. It didn't. Okay. So here's our outside. I keep calling it a crossbar. It's not really a crossbar. It's kind of an outside frame member. And we've got our bearings. They definitely have lived a good life, but they seem to be perfectly fine. They're honestly really, really easy to rotate, which is nice. And I believe we have a pretty good amount of shims here, so we'll try to keep those all in check and running well. Okay. And it looks like, oh, this one's nice and tight. That's good. This chassis was together for a long time, so I'm not exactly sure what we're going to find as we start tearing into it. It looks like this hub is lost all its screws, so that doesn't really surprise me. And we've got this wheel assembly all unbolted. It looks like they've bolted them together plate to plate, which is nice. It makes it, that's one of those things that you have to assemble in the right order for sure. Why not go rail? For the, I'm not sure which part you're talking about, I guess there. Go rail for this project would probably not be the greatest scale components. I think go rail is a lot better at the kind of FTC size robots. I guess that's the same reason you wouldn't really want to use it in a table or a desk situation as well. Just kind of a little out of scale. All right. As long as I can get to both these pinch bolts, yep. And this wheel module looks like it's coming off just fine as well. They're definitely not very clean, and you can definitely see, probably doesn't translate great on camera, but you can definitely see that these have lived a life. But part of the nice thing about taking this to events is that it's a great way to transport stuff into events. Like you can just plug a battery in and drive it around. It's like a time machine of discontinued parts. It is. It's almost all discontinued quad blocks. I say discontinued, updated quad blocks. There we go. And old motor, or not old motors, kind of not discontinued motors, but motors that we don't use as much anymore, and old Mecanum and stuff like that. So go rail is, yeah, I think Justin, or Stealth X051 hit it pretty good. With channel, you can mount it on the 32 pattern, which is really nice. Getting those mounting points as far out as possible does help a lot with rigidity. Go rail and channel, I think, as far as torsional rigidity, are probably fairly similar. The thing that really stands out in Go Builda as far as torsional rigidity, stopping flex kind of in this direction is GoTube, where it's just like insanely strong. I've seen teams have a piece of channel, and when they need it to be really torsionally rigid, run a GoTube down the whole length of that channel, and then mount it at the ends, and have some clamping mounts intermixed in there, and you can tap into that really, really good circular shape for that kind of load. Okay, I suppose we'll just go ahead and mount some new wheels on here. These, we can't bolt plate to plate like those, which I think is fine. But we'll go ahead and slide some on. This is the wrong orientation. I almost did it. There we go. This is the right wheel. I would have been mad at myself there. The hyper hub that holds this wheel on is part of one of the components that's constraining this shaft axially. So there's this hyper hub, and then there's a bearing in this channel, and it runs all the way to a bearing in a hyper hub on the far side that's bolted to the gear. So holding those two together, and those two being really tight, is really important for this whole chassis to stay smooth. Because if either of those fails, all of a sudden you're going to start introducing some motion components rubbing against channel, stuff like that. LOL, maybe you can add shock absorbers in the future. That would be sweet. Mecanum wheels really like a very consistent amount of grip and a very consistent weight distribution. I know a lot of teams see that a lot in FTC, where you may not have the greatest results with driving straight with your Mecanums because of that. Why not use standoffs mounted to the 32 pattern so it can be close enough to plate? That would be a great option too. For this, I'm just going to space them both on their own hyper hubs on the shaft and tighten them down. That would be a perfectly fine option, but it is a little more work. I think if you were going to do a project like this, some Loctite on the pinch bolts and on the bolts that actually mount the wheel to the hyper would be a great idea. A lot of the screws are missing from the hypers on those wheels, so which it makes sense. This thing had very little maintenance over the course of 4 or 5 events and a lot of driving hours. What are the wheels rated for? We don't have a really great, very solid measurement of that weight right now. We've not done as much testing besides saying, hey, we'll throw these in some pretty extreme applications and make sure they are at least as strong as the last Mecanums. Because for most teams, those were strong enough. Most teams with old Mecanums never had issues. It's just those edge cases and cases like this where you do want a little bit more, more strength. We're going to do plate to plate on this. I like that look a lot, where because these have 10 rollers and the hex shaft, the Rex shaft has 6 sides, you can kind of choose your orientation. I'm going to change this one now. Yeah, I could do it. We're not running crazy short on time. I'm going to change this to be the way I like it, because chances are this probably isn't going to get touched again for a couple more years until we're like, man, we really need to update this again. Or it'll get taken apart. You never know here. One of the nice things about GoBuilda, and something that we take advantage of a lot in the R&D department, is that it's most of the time you don't have to modify stuff. If you're building a lot of things, you really don't have to irreparably modify parts very much in GoBuilda. So most of our projects, I'd say, only exist to serve their direct purpose, and then we'll get taken apart and put on the shelves and say, okay, next project that we need 8 hyper hubs for, we can grab these 8 instead of having a chassis we never use. But this Mecanum chair is definitely an exception to that, partially because we've really beat up a lot of these parts, so they're not as useful outside of that. Will you do the GoBuilda scholarship thing next year? That's the plan. I don't believe we have any changes of plans on the scholarship. I know we just released this year's, but I suppose you're probably a junior and asking for next season. That's my understanding of the plan, but it's definitely a little bit out, so I'm not going to say for sure guaranteed, but I probably would bet a cheeseburger on it. Any examples where a team broke old Mecanums? Nobody ever broke old Mecanums, to my knowledge. What would happen is the same thing that happened here, where the plates would collapse on themselves and two rollers would touch, and that was an issue that was not uncommon. I would look for it at events I went to, and I fixed a couple teams. You could bend the plates back out. It was really not a big deal, and it happened on a lot of teams' Nexus wheels too. At a lot of events I'll still go to, I'll be like, hey, there's some Nexus wheels. Let me check out your rollers quick and see if there's any of those rollers are touching. And the thing about the yellow rollers on Gobilda wheels was that because they were yellow, they'd leave a black mark exactly where they touched another roller. Where on a Nexus wheel, you've got black rollers, a lot of teams just never noticed. So I know Recharged Orange in Skystone had a couple of rollers that were touching, and they just didn't ever realize. So I do think that was a kind of a more widespread issue with aluminum plate Mecanums, but aluminum plate Mecanums were almost always black rollers, so most teams didn't ever realize. Yeah, really, as far as an actual like failure, I don't think anybody ever broke the Mecanums. Okay, so we'll get this tightened up, and then we'll be about halfway through the modification process as soon as we get the other 4 bolts in on the other side. I tend to err on the side of over-tightening stuff on projects like this. I actually broke a hex. I broke this hex key. I broke the end off fairly recently. We recently had 2 rollers touching. Just bend it back. Yeah. That's honestly the super easy method. You can grab a screwdriver and just bend a plate. It may not have a perfectly round wheel when you're done, but you didn't have a perfectly round wheel before you bent the plate. So trade-offs there, and if it means you're running a little smoother, it's definitely seems worth it. Okay. Maybe. I like it more when the crossbars are at the end of the channel, because it's a lot easier to line it up and get the screws to want to thread in. I think I may be critiquing this build a little more than I normally would, mostly because at least one of the people who built it is most likely watching, and the other one is probably hearing me from the other room. So it's always fun to poke a little fun. One of my teammates made a gear that the wheel would fit into to turn whatever was connected to it. I think I saw that, where it was a gear-shaped 3D print that engaged with the rollers on the wheel to power it. That was cool. That definitely got us at Gobilda talking. We're like, oh, that's some neat ideas. Where could that be used? So I know I'm excited to see what you guys do with it. I bet some other people here are too. Definitely send us some pictures of that project when you're done with it. Okay, so we'll space these wheels out just a little further so that they are meshing with the. Yeah, they are pushing the shims up against the bearings and tighten those hubs. I guess I missed tightening that one, but you live and you learn. And thankfully now it's way easier because those hubs are exposed. They're not buried in the wheel. Burying stuff in the wheel is really nice, and you still can with these, but because these wheels are so much narrower, we moved the hubs outside the wheels and we still are making up space. Most likely watching Among Us. Is that what it says we're doing? I guess, I don't know. I think I should have our category set as science and technology. But you never know with stuff like this. Twitch, it's all funky. It's always funky. I have kind of checked these as I've been going through. I did get the Mecanum orientation correct, so that should be pretty good to go. So we'll get this off on the other side. That is a good. One of my favorite ways to gauge torque on screws is what kind of snap they make. I don't know how well that translates onto the mics, but these are making a pretty good snap when we get them loose, which is nice. It means they were pretty tight and still are pretty tight. And that is one of the big advantage of, we don't have any cases where we can use an impact driver on this project, but we use some dual impacts around Go Build R&D. And it's really nice to be able to say, hey, I want this much torque, and just have the same amount of torque over your whole build. That is a nice feature of having an impact like that. Oh, you said one of the people was most likely watching the stream, so it was an Among Us joke. I guess I'm old. I don't understand this. Oh, I guess they're Among Us. I get it now. That took me a second. Okay. Fine. I think I made him a mod of the channel at one point because he asked if he could post a link, and I thought he was saying that he couldn't post the link. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll make you a mod quick, so you post the link. And then he didn't need to. And then I just haven't, I don't know. He hasn't abused it yet, so I think it's probably fine. He hasn't said anything. I guess maybe he's not. The one episode Baron doesn't watch, we talk about him the whole time. I keep seeing roll in the chat, which is funny, because like I chose that keyword. I keep seeing roll in the chat and thinking people are saying ROFL. And I'm like, I have not seen somebody say that in a long time. And I'm like, oh, no, that's just the keyword for the giveaway. That definitely makes more sense with this crowd, I think. One day when you least expect, they'll use mod powers. There we go. There's Baron. They'll ban the Go Build a TV bot. No one will win their giveaways. Good morning. Okay. We'll show you guys this side. This side is kind of funny. Instead of having kind of a black line where the rollers have intersected, this one's, it's like the one part of the wheel that's clean, because these definitely have lived a life. But they've gone through concrete and they've gone over a lot of surfaces. And these both seem to be in great shape too. All these gears seem like they're perfectly fine, so definitely makes me think maybe we didn't have to go all steel on our gears, you know, but it is nicer to have steel pinion gears. The biggest advantage to a brass pinion gear in an application like this is using them as what's called a sacrificial gear, where your brass gear is in a situation where it is much easier to replace, which is absolutely true here. It'd be a pain in the butt to replace the aluminum spur gear, where replacing the pinion would be easy. So in that case, it would almost be beneficial for, even if it requires even if some of the gears wear a little prematurely, it is almost nicer because you can then go and say, okay, I might replace my brass gears twice as often as I would replace the aluminum gear if my pinions were steel, but it saves me so much work that it's worth it. Kind of a niche case, especially when you're talking about the FTC space, where a gear failing isn't just a little bit of runtime, it's also could be your finals match, where it's all of a sudden, hey, this gear can't fail. I'd rather have a higher chance of having a harder to replace gear than ever risk anything else. That looks chunkier than 8 Rex. It's 12 big, or it's 12 Rex. It's 12 Rex steel. I think they're 300 mil long. So it's definitely chunkier than 8 Rex, but for an application like this, it's perfect. Gobilda should make a line of bigger robot hardware for FRC. I think that'd be cool. There's definitely a lot of parts we'd have to come out with to do that, and You never know. Would FRC teams like GoBuilda? I think they would. Not very many FRC teams I've talked to think they would, though, so you never know. It's one of those markets where you definitely have to develop a lot of parts to break into that market before you can really start to take off, like FTC and pretty much everywhere, but it does make it not quite as appealing to jump right in. All right. So I think this is our last wheel. We'll get our crossbar back on. We'll space these wheels out correctly and test it out, see how it runs. If I leave the stream, do I have to re-enter the giveaway? No. You're entering the giveaway. Technically, if you left the stream and then won the giveaway, as long as you, I don't know, had a way to find out that you did win, you could still claim it. I don't believe there's any process in that checks to make sure you're actively watching. But we definitely appreciate it if you stick around and watch. At GoBuilda TV or Baron, was this free built or designed in CAD? That is a great question. I don't know. I think it was primarily like sketched out and then kind of free built from there. How are V2 Mecanums better than the first? Sorry, glitches gave me a heart attack. My Mecanums are on correctly, but I forgot some shims. Nope, he's right. They're on wrong. I put them on wrong. Okay, well, that's fine. I'm glad he let me know now. Yep, I was wrong. Anyway, yeah, so V2 Mecanums are, the biggest performance difference that you'll notice is that they are grippier rubber. They are 70A, which is, of course, not really a measurement of coefficient of friction, but they are a grippier rubber than the old Mecanums, so your acceleration should be better, and your deceleration and strafing should be better. They're also steel plates, so they should be a little more durable. They should handle an application like this a lot better than old Mecanums did. Yep, I was wrong on that one. Oops. I'm glad that I noticed. All right. Not I noticed. I'm glad you guys noticed and told me. That would have been embarrassing. Be like, hey, why is my Mecanum wheels? Why are they so weird? That would be definitely why. Okay. Thankfully, Mecanum orientation is just about having your back wheels on the front or your front wheels on the back. So it's easier. I know people say backwards a lot. That's kind of, it's not really backwards, but it's tough. Upside down, front and the back. Should make a circle, yeah. Y'all are funny. I agree. I always like live streams like this that are a little more casual. Like, it feels like I'm having a conversation with all you guys. Just kind of rambling about things, building stuff. It feels a lot more close to the video game streaming style of live streaming than a show like the Rex Motors shows. But they both have a really, definitely serve different purposes. Okay, there we go. Now they're on correctly. Okay, we can put the crossbar back on. What CAD programs do you use? That is a great question, and the answer is a lot of them. So I personally use a lot of Onshape. We have some people who use a lot of SolidWorks, and we have a couple people who use a lot of Fusion. Most people use more than one program around here for just different things that they need to do. A lot of people in our R&D department have a lot of roles and end up using different tools to fit in those roles. And part of our engineering design process for parts is having multiple people draw up the same part. So to kind of double check geometry, stuff like that. So that having our engineers spread out over multiple tools like that can sometimes help out, actually. Okay. If we get these to line back up, we're really close. Eric asks what my favorite way to eat a taco is. I like eating tacos soft tacos like burritos, where you just kind of roll it up. I don't know. I don't know if that's controversial in any way. That's just how I've always done it. So I don't know. Not really a fan of crunchy tacos. Definitely never been my favorite. On-shape best. I like on-shape. It's really great at some things. It's not great at other things. It's really not great at loading. Honestly, if I had on-shape that just loaded quickly, I would be really pretty happy with the kind of things I do. I know there are a lot of things, a lot of really complex parts that you can't design in on-shape or that are harder to design in on-shape. The big thing that it feels like it's missing there is 3D sketches. But I learned how to CAD in on-shape, and it's just been what I've always used. So I'm very used to those limitations and work around them. Where I might go, if I, say, learned SolidWorks or Fusion, I might end up loving that a lot more. I'm not sure. It's a lot of work to learn new CAD software when on-shape is perfectly fine for what I do. Let's see. How do you test parts? Testing parts depends so much on the individual part. Big builds like this that are really out of scale sometimes are a good way to test parts. That was a way we tested version 1 Mecanum wheels and looked for failure points. And we also definitely like building them in ways similar to how teams build them. One of the things we talk about a lot at GoBuilda is that teams will pretty much always abuse parts that we come out with. It's going to happen. Somebody won't use it right. And if we can figure out how teams are going to use things wrong and make them not break in those cases, that's always really nice. Week 3 of Asking for a Linear Motion episode, that's definitely on my list. That's one I want to cover really bad, but it is something. That's definitely a tough episode. There's a lot of stuff in linear motion and power. I think we could probably have 2 or 3 shows on linear motion. So that's something on my list. I've been looking at cool ways we could tackle that. So stay tuned. Hopefully that ends up being a good series or single show. I can make the CAD downloads not a zip, so you can download the step file. Yep, like Kevin mentioned, we have a GitHub for those. I believe the reason they are zip files, if I remember correctly, is depending on your browser, some browsers don't like actually downloading your step files. They will try to open the web page that has all of the, I don't know what it's called, it's not binary, has all of the pages of numbers that make up a step file. So zip files always download, which is nice. Okay, I suppose we will turn our transmitter on and get this tested. Roll from there. It's upside down, so it's kind of tough, so I'm just going to make sure my arms are out of the way of the gears, and we'll be fine. All right. Sweet. Seems like this is fine. Looks like everything's right. That is a hyper from there, so that's fine. I guess we will give this a shot. See how much better it is. Hopefully. Any recommended uses for old Mecanums that we aren't using? They could be cool for intakes. If you really aren't using them, maybe look at seeing if there are any teams in your area who may need them or who may want to use them. There definitely isn't anything wrong with it. If you upgraded for pure competitive advantage, there are a lot of teams who that isn't as important to them. If the question is between a free set of Mecanums and not having any, I would definitely choose old Mecanums. I think we are pretty much ready to give this a shot. How fast can you make this chair move? With these motors, I don't think a whole lot faster without just giving them more voltage. What's the ratio on those motors? They are 3.7 to 1s with an external ratio of 3 to 1. So somewhere around 11.1, somewhere in that range. So they are, and they're of course running on a 4S LiPo. So they are overvolted to about 16.8 volts. Right now, 16.34 volts. Ooh. Ooh. That definitely sounds smoother to me. And it seems like it's dealing with this floor a little better. There is still some wiggle at the start and stops, but we'll throw a chair on it and see how it does with some weight. Brushless chair, please. That would be sweet. One that was really powerful. Could really get up and go, but this is honestly pretty quick for most things. I don't know if a whole lot faster makes the experience better or if it just makes it more dangerous. Did I have this on all the way? Yeah, I think so. All right. Oh my goodness. That seems way smoother. I'm out of practice with that, unfortunately. But it definitely feels smoother to me, I think. And it spins really fast. One of my favorite parts of this is that it has some acceleration. Like, it isn't just instantly up to full speed, which makes it feel a lot faster, I think. If you guys have any suggestions for things you want to see, let me know. Add some propellers, that'd be sweet. What's the difference between old wheels and new wheels? These are a lower durometer, they are grippier, and they have steel plates, so they should be stronger. Those are the highlights. They're also much thinner, so lots of requested improvements that make things like this. It's smoother and has better acceleration, I think. Gets more grip. And it strafes pretty straight. I didn't expect it to be that nice. How goated of a driver were you when you did FTC? I really was not that good. I only drove my sophomore year. Most of my FTC, or my driving practice has happened after I graduated. The way the chair sits on the drive face always makes me happy. It's perfect. Like, it's sweet. Now play FTC game at 3 times scale with humans instead of robots. Look for the Recharge Screen YouTube channel. There's a video on there from Skystone where we had this frame and we played a little bit of Skystone with a person on it. That was fun. How do we do splines with Ethan on a chair? Well, I definitely couldn't program those, but if somebody really wants to, I guess we probably could figure out how to make that work. I guess I can do splines by hand, kind of like, and then grab a scoring element. I think that's what you do there. It is really fun to drive, especially being able to, like, one of my favorite parts of this right now is just like, oh, I'm gonna roll over to my computer and check the chat, make sure people aren't talking about it. It'd be great to build 2 of these and race them around. That would be a whole lot of fun. You have to calibrate a PID on this. Like for acceleration or for I'm not sure how any of that stuff works. So if you send me some videos, I can give it a shot. If you put a rev hub or something on it, I'll program it. We could run a rev hub and run these controllers off PWM. That'd be the best way since we're running a lot of power through this, and then not have to risk ever smoking an H bridge. And we could run off 1 hub. You should play VIP by Maniac Drive. I don't know what that is. I started reading that comment before I realized I didn't know. You should imagine having to calibrate a new PID profile for each person on the chair. That would be kind of cool though. Like if you figured out a coefficient for how much you had to change the PID for by weight, you could put like some force sensors on it and go that way. That'd be sweet. That's tough. So that is a lot easier when you have a more normal control layout. This is kind of funky because the left stick isn't sprung vertically. It's only sprung the left and right. So my orientation is arcade on the right stick, so forward, backward, and rotating, and then strafing on the left stick. If you have normal Mecanum code where your left stick is forward, backward, and strafing, and your right stick is rotating, it's really easy to do that translating while rotating thing. That is a lot easier because it's just about rotating your left finger in a circle and then holding your right thumb at a consistent location. Add some computer screens to the chair, that would be sweet. How much time did this take to make? That I don't remember. I feel like it was about a day. I think it was about 8 hours, but I could be totally wrong on that one. We need a hype reveal vid, that would be sweet. I think right now we should roll for our giveaways. That seems sweet. Seems like some great time. I'll drive around just a little bit more. If you haven't entered for the giveaway, do it right now. You have basically no time left. Make sure you're following all that good stuff, but I think we have a lot of people in here. Yeah, so I think we've got pretty much everybody. Keywords, of course, is roll, doesn't matter how many times you put it in. I'll drive one more lap and then we'll roll for our giveaways. Okay. We'll roll for our giveaways. I didn't even realize that one. My bad, I guess. Okay. We've got a couple of winners today. Again, this is for a Mecanum wheel set, so these are the big prizes. Our first winner is Shiresh1. I'm sure I got that wrong. I'm very sorry about that. And our second winner is, I think it's Kami Project, which is interesting. Kame Project, something like that. So those are our two winners. If you guys were a winner, shoot us an email to marketing@gobuiltit.com. We will get you your free Mecanum wheel set coupon code sent your way, and all that stuff like that. You see a go-kart in the background? That's because there's a go-kart in the background. We'll talk about it, I'm sure. We probably could look at you doing a show on that one, but that was a lot of fun. That was an intern project from last season. We have a lot of fun with our interns. I'm disappointed we weren't able to do it this year, but hopefully next year we can bring some back and do some cool projects like that in the future. Man, with that, I think that's about all the stuff. Let's drive it around without the chair on it a little bit, see how that goes, because we really haven't done that yet. And I'm interested to see without a lot of this weight on it, if it is still as smooth. And there's more space between the rollers, which definitely makes it harder to tell, but it looks like those plates are holding up better. And we still have some very reasonable voltages. We're at 15.78, which is perfectly fine. Let's see, we've pulled about 0.6 amp hours of power. And we've peaked at 80 amps through the system as a whole. If I remember right, I did some testing yesterday, and the most I got out of the old wheels was 60 amps, which is good, because these definitely helps kind of confirm our theories. It confirms our testing that these have more grip because they can hook up with that ground a little bit better. These motors can pull more power because they're putting more torque to the ground. They're really, really pretty warm, so that's good. We'll drive it around a little bit. It seems sweet. The sound is my favorite part of it for sure. But with that added weight, a great part of that added weight is that it keeps, there's going to be a little bit of flex here, so it can distribute that weight across all four wheels a little bit better, where I'm sure as you notice, at the end of this, of going backwards, it drifts off to a side, and that's probably because a couple of these wheels have just a little more weight on them. This chassis probably isn't perfectly straight, so that's kind of expected. So if that does happen on your FTC robot, I've seen it a few times, you can unbolt or loosen the screws that are holding your frame rails to your crossbars and tighten them up a little bit and try to get those really evenly distributed. The other thing you can do is just add more weight. It'll probably flex your chassis enough to get those four wheels on the ground. I know somebody mentioned in the chat earlier suspension would be cool for that. It definitely would. I can't believe the battery lasts that long for being so small. So it's a lithium polymer battery, it's a LiPo. They're used a lot in RC. So this one right here is a 4-cell, and it has about 5 amp hours. So really, it's not that much larger than an FTC battery capacity-wise. The really great thing is you can just pull crazy amounts of current from these. These are rated for like a peak discharge of like 400 amps. Realistically, you wouldn't want to pull those through a 60 amp connector and all that stuff, but you could for a moment, which makes them really, really impressive. Man, with that, I don't think we have a whole lot else to talk about today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching. We've had a long stream today, so I'm glad you stuck with us. This has been a lot of fun. If you have any questions, even about this Mecanum chair or whatever, feel free to shoot us an email. You can find us at tech@gobuilda.com or give us a call. Again, Teacher Appreciation Week next week. Check out the site for details, but we have some sweet giveaways we're doing for that, like a strafer and $250 in promo, all that great stuff. I'm sure you can see it on the screen right now. And we're also just released our scholarships. So if you're a senior this year, take a look at our site. It's under education in the top left. Make sure you get your application in for that. It's a $500 scholarship. So that should definitely be hopefully helpful in your journeys past first as a student, hopefully still as a mentor, and into your future. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time.